I'm Bjørg, and behind me is Snøhetta. That's the mountain. And that's also the name of our company. This is the third highest summit in Norway. It's 2,286 meters below the ocean. And we took that name, funnily, 30 years ago because our very first office was in the attic above Bierstube, a beer hall in Oslo, that was called Dovrehallen. And Dovrehallen is in the Norse mythology. It's this mountain area, and it's where the trolls lived, and they lived under in the bottom, under the highest mountain, Snøhetta, in this massive. So when we were in the attic, it was very natural that we were Snøhetta, since we had the trolls in the basement. It has also been a good name. You know, it's not one man. It's not the name of a man, which is often it is with architecture. It's the name of something in the landscape. And we think that is much more appropriate because architecture is not about one man. It's about a team. And it's about a team of people. Let me see. I just have to go. I'm going to talk about transpositioning, thinking and working method. And I'm going to do that by telling who we are and how we work, and showing you some of the outcome of our efforts, some projects. Here we are. The last year, and it was a lot of people from all our offices. First, I will read this little manifesto written by one of my clients. Not one of my clients, but one of my colleagues, I mean. Snøhetta is truly an interdisciplinary practice, integrating architects, interior architects, landscape architects, graphical designers, product designers, and artists. Interdisciplinarity is not a buzzword at Snøhetta, but rather the driving force and attitude that allows a broad conglomerate of knowledge, experience, and ideas to flow and into the formation process. Because a design never arises from a single author at Snøhetta, but is always the result of teamwork. The driving force of Snøhetta is its people, some 200 people representing some 30 plus nationalities and multiple diverse cultures. We speak not of a method, but it's rather the interdependency of people, process, and projects. Our projects can be described as examples of attitudes rather than designs. They are samples of series of contextual examinations rather than isolated masterpieces. They are associative rather than symbolic. They are comments rather than statements. Every story told is a shared experience of contemporary conditions set within a given frame. We even made a book and a traveling exhibition on this theme. We are spread as, oh yeah, is it thank you. As Nicole said, we are spread around the world. San Francisco is a studio office of the New York office, and Oslo is, of course, the mothership where we all started. Paris is the newest studio. Innsbruck has been there for a while. Hong Kong is rather new, and Adelaide is some 5 years old. So we have a good spread in the world. We also have a good spread on our projects, and I think this is a little bit not quite updated, so I think even there has been some more dots by now. I come from the Oslo office. And we are not located on the mountain, but we are by the fjord. And actually, we are some 2.8286 meters above the ocean, so it is quite fitting to the mountain. We are in this warehouse by the sea, and it's something nice about coming from the far north. from the periphery, from the edge in a way, all the way up in Norway. Because in a way we are looking, we're looking from the outside and looking in. We're not in the center. And we think that might be a good thing. When we travel, we want to learn from the culture we come to, and hopefully, since coming from the outskirt, we can ask some questions that may lead to different answers than our client expected. Our office is a hub. It's a big room, and it has a flat floor. And we think that's the only way to have an office. We try hard, even when we grow, to keep on having this flat structure also structurally in the office. A generous and a little bit messy space, but still our home. Ever-changing because we are changing. A great place to exchange and meet and discuss. And a great place to arrange parties. We're pretty good at that, actually. And now I'm going to show you the 4 most important corners of our office. Up there, you see the lunch tables. That doubles as a meeting table all day long. Very busy place. And we have their lunch every day at 12. And the whole thing is to have lunch together. No one is going to go away with their lunch boxes. We have a cook. She cooks for some 100 people and plus a variety of guests every day, and she's still smiling. I think now you will soon see that there will be a lunch up there. Up here is our coffee machine. Every architectural office has a coffee machine. And that's a very social spot. And it's a great place to exchange with your colleagues. It's a busy place, as you can see. Most of the day, somebody there. If I want to know something in the office, I go to the coffee machine, and I'm always updated. On the lower there is our stair, and that's the very central part and focal part of our social space. It's also always very busy. People go up and down to the meeting rooms that are on the mezzanine, or they sit there to talk, because we don't have any silent rooms in our office. So people go there to be a bit on their own. And also every Monday we gather for our Monday meeting. I think that will soon happen. And then on the lower part here is our in-house industrial robot, Mr. Kuka. He's very busy, as you can see, working most days. Days and night, he can be on it 24/7 if needed. And in a way, you know, when we are so busy talking, drinking coffee, and meeting, it's good that at least one person is working, producing something. A lot of offices organize in this way, in the principle of hierarchy and teams, and there are specific connections between the individuals. Our principle is spreading the teams. So if you're on the red team in this illustration, you're definitely not sitting together, and even not with the yellow one. And then all the teams are spread around the office, so if you want to talk to your team members, you actually have to get out from your computer and go over. And also sometimes you have, or quite often, we have to go out and meet the team and sit somewhere else, like on the lunch tables. So it's a very good and dynamic way of sitting together. We also have to swap places every second year. So when you really get warm and you like all the people you sit around, you have to take your things and move to the opposite side of the room, and then you sit with somebody else. And here all the disciplines are really, you know, spread out. So as an interior architect, I almost never sit next to another interior architect. Maybe some from the administration, maybe an architect or a landscape architect, or even the artist in the office, if I'm lucky. With this, we think we live in a continuous state of reinvention. And this is something important for us, because it's a way of keeping something moving, not to stagnate. And then you can see the space is quite messy. So people sometimes think, how on the earth can you work like this? But in a way, we've done it for 30 years, and it seems to work. And everybody likes it. The way we are seated actually are not by discipline, but by teams, not by teams, but random. And the swapping is a good way to keep that dynamic and to also remain the singular in the plural. That's another buzzword we have here. We usually say that Snøhetta is our most important project. And in many ways, that is true. We care deeply about our people, about their life, and how they live and what they do. And personality is always key when we have new people applying to the office. That's key, maybe also before their architectural CV, because it's very important how we interact and that we can be. Not everyone is liking to have this big group always around you, but you really have to do like that if you're in Snøhetta. And people tend to stay. So that's a problem. Now, 30 years down the road, we are quite old. We think we are young, but we're not. And so we try to stay fit, and we have our annual hike to our mountain in a way to get together and also to stay fit. And then it's also by the growing of all these small satellites, we can fill up with young people. So I think in the long run, it will be a good thing. We actually work in a way which has not been so usual in Norway. For many years, we've been multidisciplinary. So we had a group of anthropologists and psychologists at the University of Oslo to do some research on us. They chose us among 4 other totally different companies, a lawyer firm, an oil company, and a researcher company, and a bank. We were the only architect and designers. And this became the book, ID Work. Their research tried to find which phenomenon that drive the creative processes in these different companies. They found specific drivers for each company, which they again distilled down to 10 common ones that we had in common. The process and learning from the research was interesting, and some of these drivers have been more important to us than others in Snøhetta. So we have the drivers with things like prepping, zooming out, craving wonder, activating drama, daring to imagine, getting physical, double rapid prototyping, liberating laughter, generative resistance, and punk production. So let's start with liberating laughter. We laugh a lot in Snøhetta, easily and often, and it is important because it generates a lot of positive energy. So in this big, messy room, there's always somebody laughing really out loud, and that's nice. We also like be generous. That's a very wide driver on many things. We like to be generous in our projects, and we also like to be generous with our collaborators and our clients. And we investigate in conditions for collaborating between people. We have an open house. People are there most of the day and night also. And people come by, since we are very central by the water, and people go by. We are open and inclusive in sharing our knowledge. We want to explore the premises of each project. We tailor processes, and we transposition ourselves to understand and learn from others. Our generosity is also about including our clients and collaborators' disciplines into our creative processes. Then zooming out is quite an interesting one as well, because when you look really close, you get certain knowledges and specifics, like this. It says a woven thing, and you can see that it is silk and linen threads in this weave. But while you're zooming out, it can totally change your perspective and understanding. And this is the amazing artistic curtain in the Oslo Opera, done by Pa White, the woman down there. Zooming out is also as an architect, you get your head out of the computer to see the bigger picture, whether it is the people you design for, the history, the culture, or the regional understanding. Getting physical. Of course, that is how we explore and challenge ourselves in pursuing our goals. It can be, just walking in nature, something we do often in Norway. Or it is to get your hands around a model or an object, to feel the physical world in your work, to leave the computer for a while. That's something which is, so we have the workshop very close to our working tables, so it's a very easy way to go in and out and try things in the physical world. Yeah, these are also some other drivers that we like a lot. Rapid prototyping with tools, generative resistance, and craving wonder. And I'm going to get back to them later. In our work, the process itself is as important as the process of making architecture. This is an illustration of something of transpositioning, how we see it. It is a word we use in the office when talking about the way we work. It is a mindset rather than a method to be used in the creative processes. A mental exercise to let go and move outside your own discipline, to blur the boundaries, if you like. Some could say it's a kind of personality crisis. Maybe it looks like that up there. I can be whoever I want to be. As an interior architect, I can swap role and be the landscape architect for a while and try to take this disciplinary perspective. In this exercise, we also include our clients. So sometimes we say the client can be the architect and we can be the client. And then some really interesting things happening, as you may understand. To organize this in a methodical way, we have designed some method through arranging initial workshops with our clients and collaborators before we start a project. It's an onboarding exercise where we have used the drivers as the tools for the process, but it's more mental tools. So we invite the client in and give them aprons and tasks to solve together in different groups together with us. Most of the time to agree on the concept. And here you see the Pictogram Exercise, where we together with the client are trying to find out what should the concept for their project be and what should it not be, and to put up these two against each other. Very often it comes some very interesting discussions. And then we take on the aprons and we go in the workshop, and the client can really be an architect for a day. And this has been very popular. It's really, we never had a client that didn't like these workshops, that didn't find them interesting and engaging. And it also gives them some kind of ownership, or a lot of ownership actually, to the whole process. And that's also a way of rapid prototyping, because here they are going to build their concept. Each group have to agree on the concept, and then they have to build it in some kind of materials. And then for us to experience these workshops over time has given us some kind of tacit knowledge that we by instinct utilize when we are doing other projects. And also this gives some kind of collective intuition that we can work from within the studio, our studio. We have some common experiences that feeds our project and shape our way of opening up to new challenges. We have a set of tools to rely on. And in this following, I would like to show you some projects. Maybe that's an easier way. When I had picked them, I found that I only picked Norwegian projects, and strangely, they in some ways blur boundaries. We work a lot abroad. I work a lot abroad. But I think coming to you, it would be nice to show our deep and intense relation to the landscape which we live in. That has greatly shaped. Actually, the first name of Snøhetta was Snøhetta Architecture and Landscape. And it was, the boss was one landscape architect and one architect. So we always had a very close relation between these two disciplines. The interior architects came on a little later, but we are very well integrated now. And so I think by looking at these projects, you will understand that. So I start with the Oslo Opera, even though the very first project that got Snøhetta's name in the world was, as you may know, the library in Alexandria. That was another big journey. But the number two big one is the Oslo Opera. It was a gigantic learning process for the office, and a lot of our philosophies, if you can say that, and thinking has come from working specifically on this project. It's just some 100 meters from our office, so it was a very easy and close process. The opera was planned for 25 years. It used to be sitting in an alleyway almost. It was not a building you could see. In Norway, in our democratic ways of thinking, the opera and ballet is looked at as being very elitist, and it wasn't very on the big level. It wasn't very popular. Not very many people went to the opera. But the opera wanted to get out of these small premises and have something new. And as a whole new part of the city was opening up for development, they decided to put the opera as a generator for this new city development. So it got its site down by the fjord. It was much debated and much discussed, and I remember taking taxis home from late nights in the office. And to my home, I have to drive past the opera. And when it was a site, you know, the taxi drivers, you can always get some kind of ground response, what's going on in the society. And I had so many nights where I had to argue why we were building an opera. They thought it was totally stupid. A lot of money we should buy. We should rather make old people's home and hospitals, and you know, all these kind of things, not put so much money in culture. But then as the opera developed and as it started to appear, came out of the ground and out of the fjord, people got very enthusiastic. And it was very fun the last 2 years before it was inaugurated. When I took my late taxi home, even the most, you know, the newer taxi drivers that hardly could speak Norwegian, they had so much nice to say to respond because they picked me up at Snøhetta, so they knew even that we were doing the opera. And so that's a very nice way of reading, you know, in your people, how a project is received. We won this competition in 2000. It was an open international competition with 600 entries. So it was a big day when it was a Norwegian firm that took home the win. A lot of people thinks that it resembles a big piece of ice sliding into the fjord. And this image is one of my favorite because it really taps into that narrative in a nice way. Designing the opera, we investigated in the premises by questioning, what if a monumental building is a landscape? This opened up a whole world of possibilities. And it also meant that we used the site twice, in a way. First, we put the building there, and then we give back the site to the city as a public plaza. Our commissioner did not allow us to plan for this added value for gathering big crowds. They restricted us to the given program, and that had a normal roof, of course, not something that you should walk on or spend time on. But where there is space, as you know, this is an outdoor performance of, I think it was one of the big operas, and we couldn't house all the people who were interested, so they generously made an outdoor performance, and all these people came. So it's very popular. And we wanted also to, this is contemporary architecture can drive social and cultural participation by creating destinations. Not only in the meaning of a specific purpose, but rather a place of emotion. The feeling of belonging is related to landscapes. Climbing up, looking out, touching the fjord. The opera is a free, non-commercial and popular destination, managing this complex psychology of public space. We wanted to explore the walk on the roof as a destination for all types of experiences. The people of Oslo feel ownership to it. You don't need to go to the performance in the opera, but you can walk its roof. And whatever you walk on, in a way you own. So it's also a very democratic building in that sense. And as I have my way home, passing the opera, it's almost never ever I saw in these 10, 11 years since it opened that it wasn't some person up somewhere on the roof. It seems like it's almost always somebody there. Due to regulations, the roof had to be defined as a piece of art. It is 19,000 square meter Carrara marble cladding, and it has 33,000 individual stones composed by 3 Norwegian artists, Jorunn Sandnes, Kalle Gerude, and Christian Blystad. We kept the focus on the roof as a piece of art, allowing for the unexpected. If we move into the opera foyer, there is other ways of feeling ownership, taking hold of the space, and as you know, children immediately and intuitively see these possibilities. For the understanding of the concept of the opera, we as a team created our own narrative, dividing the transition of moving from the outside landscape, the big roof, and on into the lofty foyer, which we named a non-building, and then again to keep walking inside the big wooden wall, the part we call the building. This kind of narrative was another tool for the team to use as a common language. Accordingly, we found that the building asked for interior elements and furniture that responded to this concept. So in the very bottom of the slanting roof, under the slanting roof, where you find the wardrobes, we thought about the reed by the sea when we were designing the poles for the clothes hooks. And they are also integrated lights, because in a non-building, you certainly don't want to see lampshades. Also the tables, the standing tables, by the bars and the benches, we thought they should not be something you wanted to take home and have in your home. And so in this way we used the generative resistance in a way. We wanted to stretch everything a little longer to avoid making two things too obvious and fighting for the unusual. This is the art wall made by Olafur Eliasson, the Danish-Icelandic artist. And it's a beautiful wall wrapping the toilets in the opera. And it has this green light pulsing up and very slowly up and down. So as you come from the busy city and into the foyer, your pace goes down. It has this very soothing effect. So we asked ourselves, how would a toilet in a non-building concept inside an art wall, how would that look? We thought it should be like entering a cave with black walls reflecting light from the outside and the inside. And all lights, the other lights seeping from cracks and openings. And even the urinals being a light source in the room with its running water and the darkness. This was a big fight with the client because it was too dark, it was too black. At this time, this was the early 2000s. It was not something they thought would function. But we wanted to make the trip to the toilet a trip to remember and a part of the bigger experience of entering this building. Our gigantic wooden wall, it's like this wavy wall, a wavy curtain, dividing the everyday life of the outside as you enter into the world of art, of ballet and opera. And it's also like a gigantic tree, you know, like the bark outside the... And it's the main acoustical element in that space. And when you walk inside the stairs, you feel like you are in a space that is carved out of solid oak. And then entering the theater with its balconies and its chandelier with hand-blown glass and thousands of LED lights. The oak here is smoked and dark, and you feel like you are in the core of the trunk. The theater seats 1,370 people. And sitting down in your velvet chair for the evening, it has now become a normal chair. You are inside the building. And then you can sit down and another drama can start. Then I want to take you to Tverrfjellhytta. It's a Snøhetta viewpoint. And it is situated in Dovre again. That's our mountain again. And it is the site that it has a site where the photo is taken that is in a way capturing the very essence of Norwegian landscape. The mythical landscape of the mountain ranges, the natural landscape, and the cultural landscape. We were approached by the Wild Reindeer Center at Dovre, who wanted a viewpoint pavilion overlooking Snøhetta, and also a place where people could look at the wildlife up there in a protected and more peaceful way for the wild animals. And they thought the most natural place to seek help was to go to the architects in Snøhetta. We looked at the more vernacular architecture in this mountain area and found the traditional log barn. And by framing it, the body of the building, we found the main shape and dimension for the pavilion. It was put up as a 14 steel construction with glazing towards the mountain. And then by analyzing weather and conditions, view, and the landscape and site, the shape of the inner body, the inner wooden body, was generated. This was further digitalized and modeled and transferred onto our in-house robot to be milled as a model. This is a good example of how our new digital tools change the shaping of architecture and gives it a totally new language. You know, like before when we had a sharp and a soft pencil, we made other kinds of spaces and rooms. So this is a great way of exploring totally new shapes and forms. A local boat builder you can see his boat behind there. He made the balcony fronts of the opera, and he was willing to take on making that big piece of furniture from these big trunks of pine. And his router was milling it in 1-to-1 in their workshop, putting it on a truck and driving up to Dovre, where they mounted it in the frame. So the outside, it's a little space, sheltered space outside. And inside, it's 3 elements: the steel frame with glazing, the big, warm, organic wooden piece of furniture, and the fireplace. All you need for a larger group to assemble, or for a smaller group that wants to spend the night. It's always an open door, so everyone can go in and you can spend the night. You just have to bring some firewood, because it gets really freezing cold in the night. It's rather photogenic, also up in there. And it seems like the other wild animal up there, the muscus, seems to think it's an okay place as well. Then there's another little thing in the mountains. It's in a place called Åkrafjorden. It's on the west coast of Norway. And when you look at this picture, I don't think you see that there's a Snøhetta building in there, or at least you maybe have to look a little bit before you see it. It's not so easy to spot, and it is one of our smallest buildings. It's a hunting hut for a man who owned some land up there, and he wanted to go there with his friends for hunting in the autumn and the winter. The program was simple yet challenging. There should be a shelter and house for 21 persons to sleep and eat. It's only 30 square meters. The footprint and the impact on nature should be minimal. And it should mostly be put up by one man and his axe. The concept is equally simple. You bend up the ground and make a shelter with glazing on one side and a solid wall on the other. And then you put in the fireplace, which is very important, of course, and spiraling around, you have the beds for the people to sleep. Due to the remoteness of the site, it actually takes 3 hours to walk there on foot from the fjord and up. So mostly you have to go skiing, or you have to use a horse, or you have to use a snowmobile in the winter. So due to this, the main steel structure was put up and tested down in the village before it was flown into the site. And all the woodwork was cut and mounted to minimize waste on the site, and to make the mounting in the spring as quick as possible, because the weather can be harsh and it's rapidly changing. And then there was a helicopter flying in with tools and the building parts. All the stone, this is a drywall, slate drywall, is found on site and put together there. It's the wood which is hand-cut by axe, this man's axe, and it's some small steel-framed windows in this tar-treated, that's put into the tar-treated wood. In a way, it looks like it has always been there, just coming up from the ground, the stone and the wood and the grass. And this closeness of nature, it's almost like being in a tent. So again, it is a blurring of boundaries between inside and outside, which is very nice and which is very close to the Norwegian people's heart. We like to be out in the nature. In general, we do. The space is very limited. I think at the end, it is not a place for 21 persons. I think it was more like 14 or 15 who can sleep there. But you have the central wood-burning fireplace that is put into soapstone, and the soapstone gets very easily warmed up, and it keeps the warm, and it is like a heating element where you can put your cold feet, and you can also eat there, and it's cozy around when you sit on the couches or sleep there at night. It must be very put together. These men has to be good friends, I think. And there's a hand-cut ladder up to the mezzanine where yet, I think, 8 people can sleep. This is the little kitchen hook. It's of course no water or anything up there. And sometimes he takes his horse up there. And it was able to put a little dry toilet tucked into the landscape. As you can see, in the winter, you have to dig down to find your little cottage. But it also blends in beautifully and looks more like a rock in the winter landscape. And then, finally, I'm going to show you our latest project, the Under. I don't know what time now. Yeah, I think it will be okay. Under is situated at Sprangereid, which is at Lindesnes, the very southernmost point of Norway. Down here, 2 brothers and a chef had this wild idea about that they wanted to make the world's first underwater restaurant. And it's quite fitting to be standing here at the bottom of a swimming pool when I'm talking about under. The clients came to us, and they had already looked at with some other architects, looked at some possibilities. They have a hotel where the yellow spot is, and so they came to the workshop, and they was very open to whatever ideas. But there was only 2 clear things. The site was decided on, and the budget. But I think it was only for an hour in the workshop where they totally saw that the site had to be moved and the budget had to be increased. So you see, the initial workshops are really good when they have to be the architect and we can be the client. So, and very fittingly, this little bay, tiny little bay, it has a much more shallow seabed, so it was easier to come to the bottom. This project involved a large variety of disciplines outside the Snøhetta team. The team by us was by architects, interior architects, landscape architects, and brand designers. But there was a close exchange of knowledge with consultants and engineers with background and expertise from offshore and tunnel construction. And as you know, tunnel construction and offshore, you may know that that's a big deal in Norway. We have a lot of tunnels, and we do have oil, as you know. In addition, we collaborated closely with marine biologists who were involved to ensure that as little harm as possible was done to the seabed and its life during construction. And they also were to great help to find a way to construct the shell so that it could evolve into a natural reef. And finally, the chef himself for the restaurant, he was also very much involved. Another aspect of this project was to source as many materials and main workforces locally, which meant to involve small local enterprises on every level The builders, the concrete, which sourced this sand from a sand mine, ensuring a color similar to the one in the seabed. The oak wood, which was from a local forest owned by the carpentry firm that was engaged. The welders, and so on. But most important for all of this to happen was a really engaged, dedicated, curious, and totally trusting client. The early renders show the design. It had gone through many phases, actually, before it came to this. And this is also some of the nice thing of the transparency of working this kind of transdisciplinary and having this open floor workspace, because they were struggling with the form of this underwater restaurant, and it was for a while very complex, and it was both under and over, of course, and it was also going to break the waves, and it had a very complex construction. And then one of our colleagues were just strolling by the team and all the sketches lying around, and he said, "Why don't you just put a tube into the sea? Then you will see all you need to see. You know, like a water binocular or a water telescope." And so, you know, everyone knew that that was the answer. That was just in time, the right answer. Why make it complicated when you can do it really, really simple? So the tube was in, and it has this big window. This is also the render from, of course, from how we envisioned it. Also the interior with its acoustical treatment, looking a little bit like it always was there underwater. And of course, early the team started to look at all these magnificent colors and shapes that we find underwater. It was a great inspiration. And it finally evolved into some mood boards for the color palette of this project. Rising from the sea, it's constructed in concrete, and it has this plank formwork because that allows for a natural reef to grow on the outside, and also it can withstand a lot of different weather conditions. It's quite harsh down there on the coast. Just recently we got this photo showing that already now, barely a year after it opened, a natural reef is indeed quickly building up, making it possible to harvest the ingredients for the menu right off the building itself. That's not so bad. It's also magical at sundown down there. Under is humbly blending in the local landscape, but still it creates something strange that you are curious to see. And the oak on the outside facade is treated in oils so that it will withstand and stay this warm color and not turn gray. This softwood is welcoming you into the restaurant. And inside 5.5 meters under the ocean floor, the big window is the magnet of the project. Instantly you pulled towards it. There were 3 main challenges with the interior. It was the fire. It has a Class B with limited combustible materials. It was the acoustic. 40 to 60 people are going to eat here at the same time, and it is an open kitchen, and it's open all the way up to the entrance. So to make a nice and a good acoustical environment was really vital. And then it was the lighting. A guiding parameter has been to avoid the mirroring and reflection in the large window glass. We wanted it to be as natural as possible, and so the light sources were set very deep into the fixtures in order not to get any reflexes. And in absence of daylight outside, the seabed is illuminated by 5 different floodlights. This is a longitudinal section showing that the different levels, the big open space, with all the extensive use of the oak and also of the acoustical panels. An underwater building in this format necessarily gets an entrance and an emergency exit in the same part of the building on the top. The main escape staircase is the same staircase as the guests moves up and down, but there is an escape staircase number 2 behind the wall, and it is in its own fire cell. Also, there was a restriction on fire load corresponding to that of an airport. No combustible materials can be used. The client and Snøhetta had envisioned an interior with natural wood and wool. So through discussions with the fire consultant, we found that wood in thicker dimensions is difficult to ignite and therefore possible to use. So all the wood in under is 19 millimeter solid oak. The next challenge was the acoustic. In order to control, a lot of absorbents were needed. Again, we wanted to use natural materials, but due to the fire regulations, we were only allowed to use fire-classified materials in Trovera CS, the synthetic polyester. With such high demands on the amount of absorbance and also similar requirement on the materials that would solve the acoustical challenge, we contacted the Danish textile producer Kvadrat. The solution is acoustical absorbents made of a mineral wool and put into these aluminum frames and profile system, and it's upholstered with fire-resistant textile. This panel system, you may know it, the Kvadrat soft cell, has all the necessary approvals to meet the requirements for under. The available textiles, though, for these panels were not very uplifting. They were all different shades of white and gray, and we wanted a textile that gave both color and a variation of color from light to dark, like a sunset, the light at Lista, and also as a gradient, which emphasizes the journey from the top and down to the bottom. Light at the entrance and then darker and more colorful as you move towards the underwater. In addition, we wanted a surface that was as close as possible to a textile made of natural fibers. The textile to the right is a traditional locally inspired textile made in skilbragd weave. It's a so-called Telemark carpet. It's a very local pattern. The textile is made of a uniform warp color and multicolors in the weft, making some kind of a gradient. And this was the challenge we gave to Kvadrat. The standard Kvadrat textile we used was, as a starting point, consisted of a loose type of weave, technically called twill, which is the same type as we have in our jeans. And this textile is 30% transparent to meet acoustical requirements. The method to create this gradient, we were able to control every thread and to bring out the spectrum of colors in the flow of 24 meters. We used 3D digital parametric design in Grasshopper and Rhino. And these are the 10 different repeats. And there are 14 colors in the weft and 6 colors in the warp. And with these 20 colors, we could make this gradient. And the upholstery is, they are upholstered on 1.2 by 2.4 meter panels and going the entire length. This is the final effect entering the restaurant. It has been nicely said afterwards that the acoustic of this room resembles the deadened sound mimicking the cotton wool silence that fills a diver's ears. And that's a pretty nice way of putting also walking down under in this restaurant. Zooming in on the textile, to the right we see the threads, that it's consisting of these packages of different color yarn. 5 threads in each thread, 5 different colors, and we wanted an interesting effect both when you looked it up close and when you looked from a distance. Even now 5 meters down under in the restaurant space, you can see the light coming down as small prisms. And in Norway, we used the word under. It also means wonder, which easily comes to mind when we see some of these pictures. Looking up towards the sea surface where the light hits and penetrates further down into the restaurant space, or as the wind makes waves, or rain is hammering the ocean floor, creating rippling effects down below. In a way, the surface of water acts like a big chandelier where the prisms is changed according to the weather. It also is like a sundial that moves across the space during the day. There's also the artificial lighting, which is 370 small liquid light downlights mounted into the textile, and then the light source is set really deep into the fixture so that it is not making any glare or any reflection in the middle. It is also programmed to adapt to a variety of light and weather conditions, as well as table layouts, and to move in the rhythm of the waves. There's a lot you can do with this new LED technology. The vertical window, there's a big, long vertical window on the side that offers a simultaneous view above and below at the same time. And the recessed floor is glazed so that you can really see the whole view from the inside. Further into the mezzanine, there's a mezzanine level where you have the bar. They serve champagne as you come, and all guests come at the same time at 8 o'clock. They're all let into the restaurant. It's not like you can come and go. You have a fixed ticket for the evening, and they all let inside at the same time and served small bits and pieces and as a welcome in this little bar. And here we have the textile back, of course, making it a nice acoustical environment also, and all fixtures and loudspeakers and things are hidden behind the textile. Yeah, this is the stair. It's the transition between the wood, everything made in wood, and then the raw steel, the crude steel balustrade with railing that is welded at site. Everything is actually very handmade at site. And also when you look, and the steel is a crude steel, and it's only treated with some rapeseed oil. And all the sheets were welded at site. And looking towards the kitchen, you see there's the vertical window. So actually the kitchen gets its daylight through the water. And it's quite a lot of daylight coming through. We also wanted to make this specific and bespoke furniture for the under. So a chair and tables and a bench was designed to run like one big line from the front leg to the hind leg and up to close the back. Here's the prototype. The chair comes in two alternative claddings on the seat with leather and with this rope. Oh, So now it's 1 hour. I'm almost done. Here's the table, and it's also in smoked oak, so it can be black, and the chair, and it's very nice to sit in actually. And the hope is, of course, that this can be manufactured because we did it together with the Hamran company, which is a local carpenter company, and they hope to launch this as a collection of furniture that we can buy worldwide. And I just want quickly to show that also our brand designers were engaged in this to make a full brand design for Under with all the visual elements. And this was done parallel. And then to tempt your palate at the very end. So, finally, quickly zooming back to our creative drivers. Craving Wonder seems to be a very appropriate driver for the restaurant project. An architect is dealing with the psychology of space. This project is a good example of craving wonder and achieving it. Isn't this the dream that drives all of our architectural work? Thank you.